The Arkham series is one of those things, kind of like BioShock, where I play through the series about once a year, just because I enjoy it so much. And so currently I'm replaying Batman Arkham Knight. And every time I've played through this game, I sort of kind of have the same reaction, which is that it starts off and I'm every time kind of like, maybe I judged it a little bit too harshly last time. This actually has a really cool opening. And I love the whole first opening hours of the game where Gotham is becoming sort of this war zone, and it's all calm still. It's sort of the calm before the storm, and it's building all this suspense and tension, and it's creating all of this great foreshadowing for Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight. And then we get to the Ace Chemicals mission, and I'll be honest, the Ace Chemicals mission is one of my favorite missions in the entire series. I think that it's paced so well, and it has so many great moments, and I think it's actually where the Batmobile is at its very best. It's sort of used as a gadget. In this mission, I'd argue that it feels more like an extension of Batman than a replacement, which it does in a lot more of the game. So, we get through the Ace Chemicals mission. We have Joker brought back in sort of an interesting way that I was actually kind of into for a minute. We have this great moment where Gordon finds out that his daughter was working for Batman before she was kidnapped. He punches Batman, says, "I shouldn't have trusted you," and leaves. And this is a great way to start this game. The problem is that right after this, I feel like the game becomes super filler heavy, and it becomes really weird. I've always felt like I can't quite put on my finger on what my issue with the game is, but I do feel very much that there is an issue somewhere that's going on. So every time I played it, I've sort of tried to place my finger exactly on the moment when the game goes downhill and exactly what my issue is. Now, in the past, I did a video where I talked about where Arkham Knight went wrong, and I still stand by a lot of the claims I made in that video, but I feel like a lot of the stuff that I pointed out was more of the symptoms than the actual problem itself. So, I point out that the Joker blood plot feels sort of shoehorned in just to bring Joker back, and it doesn't feel like it's a very smart plot device or anything. And I talk about how the Arkham Knight and Scarecrow don't make a lot of sense, and just how a lot of this game feels as though Rocksteady wasn't as invested in telling a good Batman story, and that's the part that I sort of want to retract. I do think Rocksteady had the best intentions with this game, but I think it fell apart for a few reasons, and that's what I want to explain here, how they could have avoided that and why it doesn't quite work the way that they'd hoped. So to fully and effectively get through this, I've broken it up into 3 portions, and that is the internal conclusion. So how do we end Batman's story? And this also includes the Joker. How do we conclude this internal struggle of ideologies between Batman and Joker? You have the external conclusion, which is like Scarecrow and the other villains from the past game, so Hush, Azrael. And then we also have new stuff, so everything that was introduced in this game, Man-Bat, Professor Pig, and how do we effectively end this conclusion while also making it its own thing? Now, they very much advertised the external conclusion as what this game is going to be. Two-Face, Penguin, Scarecrow, Harley Quinn, all these guys from the previous 3 games, really, because we saw Firefly in the trailers as well, so we knew some of the Origins villains would be back as well. So it was very much advertised as this conclusion to the previous 2 games that would build off of what was set up in the side missions of Arkham City. They really marketed Azrael a lot as well, and sort of acted like this would be a conclusion to all of these villains who hadn't really been able to join forces because of the different gangs and turf wars that were going on. But now that Joker's gone, it sort of collapses this entire criminal empire and allows them to all go after Batman. And that would have been such a great story. Unfortunately, it's not really the one that we got. Instead, Rocksteady actually seemed really way more interested in telling the internal conclusion, which was Batman and Joker. Now, I actually understand sort of why they did this, and it also makes Arkham Origins make a little bit more sense. But I think that their vision for this series was to show a story between Batman and Joker. It wasn't really a story about Batman and all the villains. Those were all kind of supposed to take a back seat to Batman's main antagonist, which was the Joker. Now, I actually think that's kind of a cool way to do a Batman story, and I think that it does it pretty effectively. The problem is that that's not what they marketed, and they were very dishonest about what this game was. And even with the execution of how they end the Joker story, I enjoy a lot of it. I think that final confrontation between Batman and Joker in Batman's mind, I think it's awesome. It's a really cool ending. The problem is that they use Joker so much throughout the course of this game. And I feel like this would have been a case where less is more. I think that using Joker more sparingly and more proficiently would have made for a much stronger conclusion. I think that the way that we do this is fairly simple. First of all, get rid of the mad clown disease. It takes so much time to explain how the blood from Arkham City, even with the cure and everything, is still turning everyone into Joker, and they don't really explain it. It would have taken so much time that they just don't even bother. They just hope that y'all get it. And I didn't. And I still kind of consider it a plot hole just because of the lack of explanation as to what's exactly going on here and how it relates to Arkham City. I do consider it to be a plot hole to some degree. Again, because there's just no explanation on how it works. So my first thing is just get rid of that. And rather than having this weird plot where Batman is turning into Joker, and I think that they thought that this was going to be such a smart plot. I think that they were very proud of what they'd done with that idea. But, get rid of it. Have this be a totally mental thing where, we use Scarecrow's fear toxin to show that Batman's worst fear is the Joker and what he stood for, and the fact that maybe somehow he's not dead. Now, at this point, you could actually have Scarecrow nightmares act as they should. And if we're having Scarecrow nightmares a lot through the beginning of the game, we could focus and see things not only from Jason Todd, but from Batgirl being paralyzed, maybe Dick Grayson leaving Batman, and it could be something that Joker did. We could show Tim Drake's parents die, and maybe we could even play through these to some degree. Maybe even the first mission of the game could have been us trying to rescue Jason Todd and failing. Now, we'll talk more about that external stuff in a minute, but Rocksteady seemed so intent on keeping the Arkham Knight's reveal secret that they didn't even show Jason Todd for like 70% of the game. And I think it was, again, to keep that surprise. But at the end of the day, it just makes the reveal that it's Jason Todd, it makes it really ineffective, and it's not very impactful. So again, I'll talk about that in just a minute. And this is going to be a longer video. I've already gone on for like 7.5 minutes. So just bear with me. I'm going to get through it. But with Joker... And, imagine if they had gone that route where we established that Batman's greatest fear is Joker somehow coming back, and then we do a fake out where the Arkham Knight takes off the mask and it's Joker. That would have been kind of interesting, and they could have delved into all those weird fan theories of Joker somehow touched the Lazarus Pit formula and got really strong and agile and, something really dumb that would have made us all kind of annoyed. And then later you reveal that it's Jason Todd or Thomas Wayne or someone from the Scarecrow nightmares that we've been seeing throughout the course of the game, not just, 5 minutes before the reveal. You're setting up this reveal throughout the course of the game, and you can have red herrings, you can show other Bat family members and who it can be and stuff. But make us think it's someone else, make us think it's Joker. I think that would have been a really interesting route to take. Don't have Joker show up every 2 seconds on screen. Because I feel like that actually took away from the rest of the story and from the tone. I don't think he really helped the tone as much as he hurt it. An example I can think of is when, Gordon punches Batman in the face and is like, I never should have trusted you. You hid the fact that my daughter worked for you. And then he leaves and it's all like this crazy moment. And Joker totally ruins the tone. He's like, well, I think that went quite well considering, or something. So then I'm laughing, it's funny. But I shouldn't be laughing at that moment, and that's the bottom line. I say take him out of a lot of the hallucinations. You can amp it up towards the end, especially after we learn that he isn't actually the Arkham Knight. But I think that just would have made it, having it be a result only of the fear toxin, having it be something that was used less and more sparingly, and not a plot that was trying to outsmart the audience as much as it was trying to add depth to the dynamic between Batman and Joker, just reveal that Joker is Batman's fear. I think that by doing that, we would have had a much more impactful ending with the Joker. Now, in terms of the external conclusion, I sort of already brought up some of the stuff with the Arkham Knight, establish who it's going to be early, even if there's red herrings, give us some plantings for, if it is Jason Todd, let us play through a mission where we're trying to save Jason Todd in a flashback 5 years ago or something. Or, if it's Thomas Wayne, have the opening scene be the Wayne murders. Give us something and make it I think that would have just added so much more impact. And especially if there were those red herrings, is it somehow the Joker? Is it somehow Hugo Strange? Is it Jason Todd? And then if it's Thomas Wayne, and we've already been acquainted with this version of the character, we see that flashback, and maybe we're getting hints throughout the game that it could be him, again, it would have been much more impactful. I actually look at the difference between the plot twist in Arkham City and the plot twist in Arkham Knight, and I think it's a good example of how a plot twist can work versus how it doesn't work. When it's revealed that it's Jason Todd, it doesn't actually make a lot of sense, because his whole motivation as a character in the comics and in this game is that Batman wasn't able to save him, and that he didn't kill the Joker for what he'd done to Jason. Now, in this game, we live in a world where Gotham thinks that Batman did, in fact, kill Joker. So it doesn't make a lot of sense from that standpoint, but also, you look at how he's leading a whole militia, a whole army. How in the world did he get these resources? In the flashback, we actually see Joker shoot Robin in the head. How? I don't get it. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense, and in contrast, you look at Arkham City, right? It's revealed that Ra's al Ghul is sort of the mastermind or the puppet master behind Arkham City, and we see how he's manipulated Hugo Strange and Mayor Quincy Sharp, and I mean, obviously it's not super realistic, but from a character standpoint, it makes sense. It's in line with who Ra's al Ghul is, with what his plans are, and, to wipe out all the criminals and the corrupt, so to manipulate the government with his resources, which he does have because he's so old, and he's been around a long time, and the League of Shadows and Assassins have so many resources that it makes sense in the world of the game. In Arkham Knight, Scarecrow's motivation, the Arkham Knight's motivation, they don't make a lot of sense. Now, if they had gone with what they were advertising, which is you have Scarecrow, Jason Todd, Harley Quinn, Two-Face, Penguin, all these guys who are pissed at Batman for defeating them in the past games, and for sort of ruining their whole criminal empire, and so their whole motivation is just to kill Batman, that would have made a lot more sense. And I wish that they would have gone with that. And if they'd highlighted characters like Azrael and Hush, it would have pleased so many more fans, and I think that it would have really helped with a lot of the payoff from the setup that Paul Dini did in Arkham City. I mean, just even looking at the side missions and the boss battles in Arkham Knight, you can tell that this was super low on Rocksteady's priority list, and I think that the reason, again, was that they thought that their Joker story was so smart that they kind of put all their eggs in one basket, and that's, I think, kind of a good reminder to anyone who's writing a story, especially of this caliber, that first of all, don't stray too far from the story that you've been setting up for 2 games already. Don't abandon that. But also, just because you think something is really clever and really smart doesn't mean that you can just neglect everything else in your story. If Hush and Azrael had had proper send-offs, and if we'd had a really cool encounter with Deathstroke, and if Harley Quinn and Penguin and Two-Face had had, these epic moments and missions in the game, then everything else would have been so much more forgivable. All of my other issues would have been way more forgivable because it still would have provided me with what I'd purchased, with what was advertised. And even when I look at just the pacing of the game, I mean, you look at the mission where you're trying to track down the car that they kidnapped Barbara Gordon in, and so you have to follow the tire tracks, and it's like an hour long versus like 5 minutes of just following tire tracks, because it's like, this bridge isn't down. I have to go, get the bridge down so that I can cross to the other part to finish tracking this truck. You lower the bridge, and then Riddler shows up and says, I captured Catwoman, come find me. So then you have to go do that. And then the Arkham Knight's like, I'm putting bombs all around the city, you have to stop me, Batman. So then by the time I get back to the main objective, after all of this fetch questing, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. And so I'm forgetting what the plot is as I'm playing it, because it's so filler heavy and trying to be long, and I really feel like it's quantity over quality. You look at the side missions, the most quantity of side missions isn't even the Riddler this time around, it's the freaking militia. Those are the most basic side missions. Like, it's literally just the same setup every time. It's like, hope you have to go and drop down into this militia checkpoint and beat them up, and there's like 20 of them, and then they've started putting checkpoints up on towers. You got to go take out like 20 of them. oh, there's a bunch of these trucks driving around the city. You got to go take out like 10 of them. And it's kind of clear that Rocksteady was more interested in this whole Joker story, and so again, they kind of neglected a lot of these villains that we wanted to see. I mean, at the very least, the Seasons of Infamy side missions could have been in the base game. All those challenge maps could have been in the base game. And it's kind of frustrating that this game didn't really feel complete upon release, and I'd still argue it doesn't feel like a complete conclusion to Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. And so I think that the problem, ultimately, is that they were so focused on trying to tell this Batman-Joker conclusion, and it feels like a first draft of that. It doesn't feel like it's a very polished version of the Batman-Joker conclusion, but they put all their eggs in that basket, so then all this other stuff that we were actually really excited to see, like Hush and Azrael, feel like afterthoughts. They feel like it's obligated, or like they feel obligated to put it in. They didn't feel passionate about using those characters. And it's really too bad that Paul Dini, who was doing all that setup, wasn't able to return to write this story, because I think it would have been way more cohesive and competent. Now, finally, let's talk about how they added new stuff in. So we got like a bunch of new villains and side missions. So we got like Man-Bat, Professor Pig. Even Jason Todd was completely new. You know, they acted like he was some plot point throughout the whole saga, but, you know, he was really introduced here. And when you're introducing new stuff into a game, I think it has to kind of make sense, or at least play some role of significance. My problem with missions like Man-Bat and Professor Pig is it's, again, just the same thing over and over and over. And you saw little glimpses of that great take on these characters that Rocksteady was so good at. You know, I thought that the Man-Bat stuff was actually really interesting, but it would have been so much cooler if they'd have found a way to implement him into the main story rather than just having him be a meaningless side mission that really is just you going and jumping on his back 3 times. It would have been interesting if maybe you needed some kind of serum from Dr. Langstrom, so you had to find Man-Bat and take him down and cure him and turn him back into Langstrom and then get the cure from him or something. And I know that like what I'm saying isn't super fully thought out or how exactly I'd implement it in the story. And the reason is that there's not a whole lot of purpose in doing that. I don't think. I feel like I'd just be writing fan fiction. So I'm just trying to sort of explain why I take issue with a lot of the stuff in Arkham Knight and how they could have done it instead. And I'm just saying if they'd been able to integrate more of these villains that we actually wanted to see into the main story, and the side villains had actually had satisfying conclusions and maybe some boss fights, I would have been much more satisfied. And a lot of this new stuff that they added, again, like I said earlier, you know, you got to set it up in this story. You can't just throw stuff at us and hope it will stick. And I feel like that's what they did with Jason Todd mainly, but also with Man-Bat very much. I think Professor Pig was done the very best out of the new villains in the game. You know, but I mean, like, you look at Simon Stagg, who really cared about him in the game? Like, it would have been so much cooler if it had been someone like the Great White Shark, or someone that we've actually been excited to see, or if we needed to go get information from Prometheus, or Killer Moth, or the Rat Catcher, or someone who is more interesting. I mean, Simon Stagg, it's like, you might as well have just put Donald Trump in the game. Like, he's such a boring character. And so, at the end of the day, I think Rocksteady had the best intentions with this game. I think that they really wanted to tell a good conclusion. And I think that the problem was that they thought that the Batmobile and that the Joker plot was so good and so genius that they didn't really have to worry about anything else. The problem is it comes off as this really pretentious B-list art house movie. And it feels really, it kind of feels like an art house indie film that turned into a B movie because it didn't have quite enough drafts behind the screenplay. And I don't hate the game by any means. I think it looks great. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to do in it. I just wish that it had been more cohesive and more thought out. But anyways, thanks you guys so much for watching this long video. I apologize for the length and for the rambling, but these were just thoughts I wanted to get out. So thanks again for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.